Welcome back to the channel. I am Commander Tyrael, and this is Aviere, a Soldati-Class Destroyer from the Italian Navy. I left the Italian Navy as my last nation to grind, knowing that they have a few distinct disadvantages that heavily overshadow their advantages in combat, with the most prominent weakness being their poor fire rates and lackluster armament when compared to other nations. The Soldati-Class Destroyer, also known as the Cmdr class, were a group of destroyers built for the Regia Marina during World War II. The ships were named after military professions. There were two batches, 12 ships were built in 1938 to 1939, and a second batch of 7 ships were ordered in 1940, although only 5 were completed. Aviere, meaning airmen, was built at the Otto shipyard in Livorno, and was laid down on the 16th of January 1937, with completion on the 31st of August 1938. Between September and December 1942, Aviere carried out a number of escort and transport missions between Italy and North Africa. On the 16th of December 1942, she sailed from Naples together with her sister ship, escorting the German freighter Ankara towards Bizerta. At 11:15 on the following day, the submarine HMS Splendid attacked the convoy and torpedoed Aviere, which blew up, broke in two, and quickly sunk. About 100 of Aviere's 250 crew survived the initial sinking, but only 30 could be rescued by the torpedo boats in the following afternoon. The rest perished. 220 men were lost. Among them was Commanding Officer of Aviere and Destroyer Division 11, Captain Ignazio Castrogiovanni, who was posthumously awarded the Gold Medal of Military Valor. The design was essentially a repeat of the previous Oriani destroyer design, featuring an identical main gun armament of 4 120mm/50 caliber guns in 2 twin turrets. The ships were equipped with 6 530mm torpedo tubes in 2 triple mounts amidships. Although they were not provided with a sonar system for anti-submarine work, they were fitted with a pair of depth charge throwers. The ship could also carry 48 mines. A short 120mm gun was mounted on the pedestal between a bank of torpedo tubes for firing star shells. While the initial anti-aircraft armament consisted of 12 13.2mm machine guns, this was gradually upgraded to 20mm gun mounts by 1943. The ship's power plant had 2 geared steam turbines driving 2 shafts and generating 48,000 horsepower. This, coupled with a large funnel, was sufficient to propel the destroyers at 38 knots or 70 km per hour. The Soldati-Class Destroyers had an overall length of 106.7 meters. The ships had a beam of 10.1 meters and a draft of 4.3 meters at deep load. The Soldatis displaced 2,450 metric tons at deep load. Their wartime complement was 206 officers and enlisted men. They carried enough fuel oil to give them a range of 2,340 nautical miles at a speed of 14 knots, or 26 kilometers per hour. Orders for a second batch of 7 destroyers were placed in 1940, with all bar one of these ships to carry the main 5-gun armament. 4 of the first batch were modified in 1941 by replacing the Star Shell gun with a 5th 120mm gun. 10 ships of the class were lost during the war. 3 of the survivors were transferred to the French Navy and 2 to the Soviet Navy as war reparations, while 2 served in the Italian post-war Navy, the Marina Militare. They were rebuilt as anti-submarine escorts in 1953 with their torpedo tubes removed and an anti-aircraft armament changed to 6 40mm pom-pom guns. The Soldati class was the last and most modern class of destroyer to enter service before the Italian armistice in 1943. Like most Italian destroyers, they were designed with high speed as the primary emphasis. They have no armor aside from 12mm anti-fragmentation shields protecting the main gun mounts. There are also some large fuel tanks which provide some degree of protection to the transmission and stern and amidship main gun magazines. They have a massive unarmored bridge that takes up almost the entirety of the forward superstructure, which makes them very vulnerable to command crew casualties. The Tech Tree Soldati has a crew of 215 men, with the premium Aviere having less at 187 men, which is unremarkable for a destroyer at her battle rating. In both arcade and realistic, the Soldati class has very good acceleration both forwards and backwards from a standstill. This gives you excellent ability to dodge torpedoes or enemy salvos, and has a respectable sustained turn speed of 49 km an hour in realistic. The Soldati's main armament have excellent fire arcs, fast traverse and elevation speeds, but are crippled by their low rate of fire, which is 8 rounds a minute with an aced crew. The 120mm guns can fire 3 types of ammunition: high explosive, armor piercing, and high explosive delayed fuse. The high explosive shells are identical in terms of filler at 1.6 kilos of TNT, which is poor compared to similar caliber guns in other nations, and are also smaller than the ones used by older Italian destroyers such as the Leone and Turbini. The AP shell is very competent, and it is a true AP shell, having 1.3 kilos of TNT and a high velocity. It has good penetration capabilities and is able to get through belt armor of light cruisers at medium to low ranges. This is my preferred shell for Italian destroyers, though it is prone to overpen if not aimed at heavier modules such as engine rooms, transmissions or magazines. Like almost all Italian ships, the Soldatis have a weak anti-aircraft armament consisting of 4 twin Breda 20mm, 2 on each side of the ship. These are decent close-range anti-aircraft weapons, but are too few to really provide effective protection. In addition, the railings on the gun nests surrounding these weapons stop the gun from depressing enough to engage surface targets closer than a kilometre, making them almost useless against coastal craft, unless you use your ship's tilt during a hard turn to bring them to bear. The depth thrower has questionable utility against surface targets due to being mounted high and near the bridge, and also only containing 1 charge per side. The Soldati class has the speed to get to important locations quickly, but unfortunately is really lacking in firepower to make much of an impact. Her guns have glacial reload speed for their caliber, and the high explosive shell is lacking in punch. Her AP shell is reasonably good, but she simply doesn't have the damage output to fight head to head against most other destroyers, especially American ones. The torpedo armament is also fairly unremarkable, with high speed, low range. However, they can be serviceable once torpedo mode is installed. The ship has virtually no armor and is highly vulnerable to hits to its oversized bridge and exposed main guns. With all this in mind, the Soldati tends to fare very poorly in close-range brawls. Even when ambushing a target, her weak shells and low fire rate can leave her outgunned by the ambushed target. She functions best in a supporting role where she can rely on teammates to cover her many weaknesses. However, a captain with good accuracy and ship knowledge can make good use of the AP rounds and effectively snipe critical modules and compartments. The overall cons of the ship are a huge unarmored bridge, small HE, low main gun fire rates, inadequate aircraft defenses, it cannot depress them enough to engage naval targets at close range, and the torpedoes have very short range without torpedo mode. The benefits of the ship: she's very fast, fairly large AP filler with great penetration for her battle rating, fast main gun traverse and elevation speeds, and wide main gun traverse arcs. Ariane Aviere compared to Ariane Genieri and Ariane Cosiari have less main gun and less crew. Instead of having 5 120mm cannons, it only has 4, which is a 20% decrease in firepower on an already mildly impotent ship class. Though this does come with a decrease in the battle rating to 4.0, so you will see more reserve tier destroyers to fight. Even if you have a deep interest in Italian ships and coastal vessels, I would avoid playing Italy as your starter nation. Although the tech tree is smaller and theoretically easier to grind, I see it as an unnecessary handicap for new players. If you find open maps without cover, you'll be an easy target, so move away and fire at a distance with your high velocity rounds, and use your excellent mobility to dodge shots. Having a fast, agile ship means you need to be constantly moving around to make the most of its strengths. Make an attempt to use the ship as a blocker for enemy cap rushes. Its fast torpedoes and agility lend itself well to torpedo jousts with early destroyers, being mindful of coastal boats who will need to be destroyed with the main guns. Overall, Aviere and her sisters are decent ships, but require a little more finesse to do well. It's not a terrible time, and Aviere's premium status have allowed me to unlock most of the early ships quite quickly. You have to play them more passively and opportunistically to succeed. There are certainly worse ships you could play, although that list is not huge. And that just about sums it up for the Soldati-Class Destroyer. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching till the end. Until next time, Commander Tyrael, out.